We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Again, if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, wondering where this video is throughout the week because it's not on the Joe Holka YouTube channel, here to remind you guys this is the one segment per week that will be exclusively on the Line Movement YouTube channel. So the great thing is all of these things throughout the week, it's building towards something like this with a great guest like Mike Tagliere. Yet again, you guys know him at FantasyPros. You know him at Mike Tagliere on Twitter. Mike, I know you're a busy guy, man, so I appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Oh, dude, I always love hopping on talking some DFS. I mean, we're now at Thursday now, so it's the point in the week where my work slows down just a little bit because the primer is out, and I'm excited.
Yeah, you said it, man. The primer. That's what everyone should be focused on in terms of your work. That's where this, like, the accumulation of all of the Mike Tagliere knowledge in one spot. So we're happy that we're actually going to change this thing up a little bit. I guess I should probably mention that off the top instead of going through like a quick and dirty slate breakdown. We're actually going to give you guys our top 5 locks of the week on DraftKings. We're going to go position by position. So at quarterback, Mike, Kyler Murray. I don't think that's going to be a huge shock to most people throughout the week that there's going to be a lot of talk about this Seattle and Arizona game. But tell us why you're willing to pay up for Kyler this week.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler's been crazy efficient and consistent in fantasy. He doesn't have a finish outside the top 10 all season long, and that's despite him averaging like 7.2 yards per pass attempt. So he hasn't been a particularly efficient passer, but when you take in his rushing totals and you add that in with the fact that Seattle is facing, I think, 47.4 pass attempts per game, just to tell you how ridiculously high that is, they've already had their bye week, and they are still leading the NFL in pass attempts faced. So therefore, teams are dropping back to pass 65.6% of the time. Seattle stopping the run extremely well. They've allowed some rushing production to quarterbacks. Everything that you want in a matchup for someone like Kyler Murray, this matchup has it. Teams are running 75.6 plays per game against them. That's almost 6 full plays more than any other team in the NFL, which is just kind of crazy because we know that Cliff Kingsbury wants to run a fast-paced offense. I know Kenyon Drake got back on track last week, but I don't see it happening against Seattle. This game is going to be on Kyler. Even if they fall behind against Seattle, the more the merrier. Great. So Kyler Murray, 7,100 on DraftKings. He's just the guy you have to play at quarterback.
Yeah, Mike, you know me, I don't look as much at matchups as certain people. I like to kind of dig into some specific data points. But one thing that I am trying to get a little better at is being aware of these man coverage versus zone coverage splits. So one thing that I thought was really interesting when looking into Kyler this week was that his splits are pretty drastic. So in man coverage, 6.1 yards per attempt against zone coverage, 8.2 yards per attempt. So he's willing to air it out a little bit more. And only the Panthers have played more zone coverage this season than the Seahawks, just under 80% this year. So do you think there's any validity to those type of metrics? I've been trying to use it a little bit more.
There is with certain quarterbacks.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers is fantastic. He's a fantastic timing-based quarterback. He loves man coverage where he almost expects his receiver to be in a certain spot at a certain time, so he'll throw it before the break.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kyler Murray, going back to his college days when he was coming into the NFL, my scouting report on him, basically he waits too long. He waits for a target to get open in man coverage, and a lot of times it's just too late. Whereas in zone coverage, he can anticipate that a little bit better. It's a little easier for him. So I do think there is some validity to that, and it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, before we move on to running back, just on that same theme, I always kind of want to get people's opinions on this because I've been kind of staying away from this, but there's enough people on Twitter that told me I'm wrong that I looked into it a little bit more this week. So if we look at the opposite side of this, so I mean, realistically, the other side of this game is the complete opposite. So we're going to see Russell Wilson against a ton of man coverage, the third most actually in terms of the Cardinals this year. Some people talk about how that's actually a benefit for rushing production. If they're man coverage, they're not facing the quarterback. It's able to kind of get out and get some chunk yardage there on the ground. So that's probably a knock against Kyler in this spot in terms of maybe his ceiling on the ground, maybe I guess a tick in favor of Wilson. So Wilson versus Kyler is one that I'm still kind of struggling with. But do you agree with that in terms of the rushing ability and man coverage versus zone?
Yes and no. It might cap the ceiling in terms of like teams are going to track a quarterback down because they have their eyes on him at all time in his zone. Whereas man coverage, they could just get lost and not even realize the quarterback where he's at on the field. But it also could create more opportunities because in a zone defense, it's a little bit fluffier in terms of like they spread out a little bit more and it's going to create some of those holes. So he could basically maybe not break off 60-yard runs or something like that, but he should get a bunch of 5-10-yard runs here and there. He is someone that's scrambling quite a bit despite Seattle not getting much of a pass rush. So yes and no. Russell Wilson was someone that I am a little bit worried about this week. Just going back to that side, this is the same exact scheme that he played last year against Arizona. Arizona was a much worse defense last year, and Russell Wilson threw 1 touchdown in each of those games. I don't think he threw for more than like 240 yards in either of those games.
Interesting.
So Yeah, it's weird because Arizona is playing better with Patrick Peterson in the fold. They moved Byron Murphy into the slot. Drake Kirkpatrick's been a good acquisition, but losing Chandler Jones in that pass rush, that does hurt. I know it didn't really show up against the Cowboys because the Cowboys just don't have an offensive line right now. But Russell Wilson, I think that Kyler, if they were both on an even playing field, I'm going to pick Kyler this week. Russell Wilson's more expensive, but I like Kyler over Russell Wilson this week.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to running back. So your running back lock of the week, you're not going to have to talk me too much into this one. Alvin Kamara. Obviously, it's a really strong matchup for him overall. Carolina's defense specifically is seeing the third highest percent of passes go to running backs. Another thing we see happen a little bit more against zone than against man. So tell us a little bit about Alvin Kamara this week, even potentially with Michael Thomas back.
Well, Michael Thomas, so he came back to practice, and then all of a sudden, Nick Underhill, the beat reporter for the Saints, came out and said that he saw Michael Thomas leaving the locker room like mid-practice, had cleats in his hand, and all this. Yeah, and we were all like, what's going on? Apparently, he's dealing with a hamstring injury now. I think the Saints have some real issues with Michael Thomas right now. He's a very young guy. He's a very seemingly immature guy that just wears his emotions on his sleeve, and it might affect him with this team. They may decide to keep him out another week. That's obviously going to help Kamara. Just because it brings his target floor up. I don't think this is a bad matchup for Kamara regardless. I mean, the Panthers team has allowed 39 running back touchdowns in their last 22 games. That's obviously a fantastic number. And on top of that, I think that this matchup actually favors someone like Drew Brees in the fact that he doesn't throw the deep ball anymore. He's taking those underneath routes nonstop. He's willing to throw it to Kamara 10 times per game. And the Panthers have allowed a league low. It's like 6.08 yards per pass attempt this year, which is crazy. I don't think anybody expected that considering the kind of rebuilding they're doing. They had to spend their entire draft on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't think anybody really expected them to be good this year. It was kind of like a rebuild defense, but they're doing a good job. But at the same time, teams are treating it kind of like a West Coast offense. So they're targeting their running backs an awful lot. And because of that, you're seeing the weighted opportunity to running backs be the second highest in the NFL against the Panthers. So Michael Thomas is out there. Fine. It's still fine to play Kamara. I love Aaron Jones as well. Aaron Jones, if you want to save some money, go down to him. He's a great play. But if Michael Thomas is out, I don't know how you avoid Kamara.
I'm with you. If anything, I'm kind of hoping that Thomas plays and just draws some ownership away from Kamara in some ways in tournaments. With you on Aaron Jones, Sigmund Bloom talked about it earlier this week. It just feels like there's another 2-3 touchdown game coming at some point from Aaron Jones. Anyone that played him last week kind of got burned. I guess that Green Bay offense in general last week I think is super interesting in this spot. You said a buzzword for me, Mike. You said weighted opportunity. So this next guy at wide receiver for your lock of the week, Terry McLaurin. He's like always this guy that if you look at like everything past his quarterback play in front of him, I guess outside of the team total also, but like 5,800 for a guy with this type of target share, with this type of air yard market share in general, it's just a bad price, right? So what do you think about Terry McLaurin at wide receiver?
Yeah, I keep waiting for them to fix his price. I get the fact that he has bad quarterback play. Allen Robinson has bad quarterback play.
Correct.
You have to look at the targets, and knowing that Washington is trusting Kyle Allen a lot more than they trusted Terry McLaurin. I mean, in a very closely contested game, Terry McLaurin saw 12 targets last week. That's showing Kyle Allen. If you go back, this is the same offense that Kyle Allen played in last year with the Panthers. Kyle Allen targeted DJ Moore relentlessly to the point where we were playing him as a low end wide receiver one every week. And I don't know why that would change with Terry McLaurin. His offensive line is shot. That's fine. The defense is playing a little bit better than I think anybody anticipated, especially the secondary. But Kyle Allen is willing to lock onto a target. And as long as he's willing to do that, that's fantastic. There have only been 3 wide receivers this year who have seen double-digit targets against the Cowboys this year. Those receivers were Tyler Lockett, who had 9 catches for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley, 7 catches, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Darius Slayton, who caught 8 passes for 129 yards. That's from Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has been playing like crap, like legit crap. And Darius Slayton's able to rack up 8 catches for 129 yards against his secondary. Don't be panicked too much about what happened with DeAndre Hopkins on Monday night. Or Sunday night, whatever it was. I get these days
Tuesday
confused.
Night, Thursday night. We got games all over the place, man.
But don't worry about that too much because Kyler Murray was clearly off that game. He wasn't throwing the ball particularly well. And if you were to remove that Christian Kirk one long touchdown where he caught it with his fingertips, it would have been a really, really bad game. Like Murray would have probably averaged like 3 yards per target or per pass attempt or something like that. So it was just a bad game for Kyler Murray overall. But Terry McLaurin is just. He's going to be in my cash lineup. He's going to be in tournament lineups. There's really no reason to play him at 5,800. Realistically, in terms of the opportunity he's been getting, he should be priced probably right around 7,200.
Yeah, the guys he's around literally in this list. It's Stephon Diggs, a 0.7 weighted opportunity. He's 7K. It's DeAndre Hopkins. He's a 0.7 weighted opportunity. He's 8.2K. DK Metcalf just below them at 7.2K. And then Terry McLaurin's just chilling there at 5,800. Like, I don't understand it. So I'm totally with you on that one. This next one at the tight end position, I'll say this. Tight end has been hard for me to really kind of figure out not even just the best play, but like, I don't know if we're going to have a ton of salary overall. So this mid-range is really interesting overall. So Hunter Henry is your tight end lock of the week. Tell us why.
Yeah, I'm really not even thinking about this one. DraftKings has made it really tough at tight end this year. They're pricing them up. You almost never have guys that are under 4K that are getting, 6-7 targets per game. And in fact, there's no tight ends out there because every week I go through and I look at the top 10 performers at tight end, and there's like 4 guys that no one was even talking about all week, like legitimately no one talking about because they just pop up. People have talked to me, do I drop Zach Ertz? This is before he got hurt. And I was like, who are you dropping him for? Like, really think about that, because if you don't have Travis Kelce, Kittle, those guys, it's basically been a crapshoot. But Hunter Henry is a guy that has seen at least 7 targets in 4 of 5 games this year. Justin Herbert has proven to be very competent, carry multiple fantasy options. And then you go to the matchup there in this week with the Jaguars. They've allowed 10.63 yards per target and a touchdown every 7 targets to tight ends. This amounts to 2.63 PPR points per target. Like the Cardinals last year were at 2.3. Everybody played everybody against the Cardinals.
Yep.
The best part about this, Joe, is that if you look at the competition they've played, it's not like they've played like literally top 3 tight ends. They played against Jonnu Smith, fine, Darren Fells, TJ Hawkinson, Mike Gesicki, Jack Doyle, and Drew Sample. That's who they've allowed those numbers against. So Hunter Henry, I mean, you're just looking, it's going to get 7 targets, in 80% of the games like he has. At 4,500, DraftKings is kind of giving us, it's kind of a gimme play this week.
Do you have any concerns that Keenan Allen will play in this game? So he was dealing with that back spasms issue. Do we have any sort of, update with Keenan Allen this week? Because if he's out, obviously Hunter Henry is going to gain even more steam, I would imagine.
Oh, he would, and then Mike Williams would become chalk at 4,700. But I still like Henry even if Keenan Allen plays. I mean, you can say all you want about worrying about the target share, but this is a very top-heavy offense, especially without Austin Eckler in the lineup, because you have to look for the targets. You have Mike Williams, you have Keenan Allen, cool. Where else are these targets going? Like Justin Jackson, he's someone that actually missed practice yesterday. I liked him in cash lineups as like a guy that was 4,900, but if he's going to, I don't know if he's limited today, or I have to basically see the practice reports from today to see if that's a real thing. But it's just so concentrated, this offense, that I really don't have to worry about Henry, because again, he has seen those 7+ targets in 80% of games, with Keenan Allen getting a massive target share from Justin Herbert. It's just the matchup's too good to pass up. The opportunity's there. And at 4,500, I mean, they're pricing guys like TJ Hawkinson at 5K, where it's like, okay, I love Hawkinson this week, but he's not a guy that's guaranteed 5 or 6 targets. Like you're not even guaranteed that. It is a great matchup against Atlanta, but again, they're making you pay for him, and they're doing this every single week. So tight end it's been a crapshoot. And again, if you get a guy that gets 10 PPR points, you're fine. Absolutely fine.
Yeah, like I was going to bring that up with the pricing with tight end too, because like you said, it's so top heavy, but we used to get, like, if we were to just take all the names out of it, all the teams out of it, and just look at target shares and data for some of these guys that are priced at close to 5K, these guys would have been like 3,500 last year. So like there is a very, very clear tier gap between the top tight ends, and between even just at that point, I just rather pay down for some of these dart throws and good team totals, all that kind of stuff. So this is a mid-range one that I think makes a lot of sense. So I'm on board with that one for sure. So we're going to move on to our 5th lock of the week at the DST position. Washington football team. They're 2,500, a slight home favorite against Andy Dalton and the Cowboys. Washington, 3rd highest adjusted sack rate this year. Andy Dalton, 47.2% completion rate last year while he's under pressure. Nearly identical this year, obviously a much smaller sample, but he's someone that really struggles under pressure overall. So 2,500, I guess, seems like an awesome spot for a defense that's going to get a ton of pressure. Any thoughts on Washington DST?
I like Washington. They're only 2,500, so you're not paying a whole lot. Chase Young came back to the lineup last week, so he's helping that pass rush get there. And Andy Dalton lost Tyron Smith, so people are going to compare him to Dak Prescott, naturally, because he's the Cowboys quarterback. He has all this talent to work with. If you look at Dak Prescott's career without Tyron Smith, it was not as good. He didn't look nearly as good. Same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, that's like he's the guy on the offensive line. He's that monster of a man, the best left tackle in the game for quite some time. Not only did they lose him before last week, but they also lost Zach Martin in the middle of that game, their best interior offensive lineman. He went down with a concussion, which is really weird to see. It was just like in the middle of the game, like an offensive lineman. Usually those guys just have like an injury that is just like a major injury to the lower extremities or something. It was a concussion. And knowing that offensive linemen have serious concussion issues later in life, like in terms of like that repeated beating over and over, it's not like a receiver where he takes a hit, 5 times a game or whatever. These guys on every single play bang heads. So I can't see him playing this week. So they're going to have a real problem with that Washington pass rush. And Andy Dalton's not a guy with very much mobility. Washington has also played extremely well against wide receivers. They've allowed the fewest wide receiver fantasy points per game. So if you take away what Andy Dalton has, or even limit it, in terms of the wide receiver production, where is this production coming from? Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been particularly good. And again, the offensive line is missing 2 of its best pieces. So yeah, Washington at 2,500. I think that's probably as low as I want to go. Because usually I'm looking to like get it down as far as I can, but you can't play the Jets defense.
On that note, Mike Tagliere, everyone, lead NFL analyst at FantasyPros.com. Really appreciate the time, my friend. Let people know where they can find the primer, what day it comes out. I know I always catch you on a Thursday when you're a little bit more relaxed, which is great. But let's make sure that enough people see it from our audience and get you some more all about the page views, all about the clicks, my friend.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's at FantasyPros.com. It goes up Thursday morning by 9 o'clock in Eastern time. That's and again, I write it's over 30,000 words a week. I write a paragraph on every player from every game, trying to break down the process behind it, because I've always believed in process over results. Fantasy football is not perfect. It's not. And that's part of the reason we love it. But the idea is that you want to understand why you started a certain player over the other player. And I promise when you read the primer, it will give you peace of mind.
Good stuff, man. Good luck in week 7.
You too, man.